implemented 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago.
So 2 years ago brings us to this summer.
That's going to be a question for the hearing officer. So that's where I say we don't, and this is probably an important thing for the board to note, unless a grievance does not comply with the civil service rules, we accept the grievance. The grievance then moves to the hearing officer. The hearing officer is the authority set by the board to then to make those gray area decisions that I don't have the authority to make and the board doesn't have the authority to make. Pay strictly is not grievable by case law, but when employees are grieving inequities and potential discrimination, then that's going to be a call for the hearing officer. So that's why those move forward then with the hearing officer. If we have any questions about grievability, it goes before the hearing officer. That pre-hearing conference that I let you guys know would be on Monday. Typically, the first deadlines that are set in any hearing, the hearing officer typically, I can't speak to this one, but what is usual is the hearing officer will typically set a first deadline that will be any motions, and typically those would be motions filed by the city, and that would be a motion to dismiss, a motion for summary judgment. So the city would have a deadline to file any motions. The second deadline that's usually set at that conference is then a deadline for the grievant, or grievance in this case, to respond to those motions. Typically, there's not going to be any date set after that. So the first step of this obvious is probably going to be setting dates for any potential motions by the city. So that's where the city, if they felt there were issues with the grievability of it based on timing, based on subject matter, whatever issues they felt were the basis for a potential dismissal, then that burden would be on the city to file and support that motion. And then the grievance would have the opportunity through their counsel to respond to that.
And can these be handled if they're similar in one hearing, or do they all have to be individual?
These are all the fun questions that we're kind of muddling through as we go, because this is, like I said, unprecedented. In the past, we've had multiple grievances filed on the same issue. Sometimes the grievance have done them on one grievance, one singular grievance. They file one and they all have their names on that grievance. And we've had some where maybe there were 2 or 3. We've never had this volume. Each of these grievances did file separately. So one of the initial decisions for the hearing officer was, could those be heard collectively at the pre-hearing? And that is the decision that she made, thank goodness, for the ease of scheduling. She is going to treat because the fire grievances are on the same issue, she's treating those collectively. Same with the police, she's keeping them separated, but is also treating those collectively. So at least right now, those will move forward collectively. So the pre-hearings on Monday it'll be a group pre-hearing that will include all of the grievance in the same meeting.
Okay, so, and it's my understanding within the charter, like we said, so compensation is a non-grievable. Is that correct?
Pay itself, so any condition of your employment. So my salary, what I agreed to come work for, or the standard pay raises that are determined by budget and by council, those are conditions of your employment. Anything considered a condition of your employment would not be grievable, and that comes to us through case law, not through the charter or through our own rules. So that would then be the city's burden to say if that's what they feel is a grounds for dismissal, versus the grievance supporting that the basis is not strictly their pay.
Okay.
That we leave that to the attorneys and to the hearing officers.
So when folks come to you initially, do you say your role is to pass them on? Do you mention that pay is not grievable?
Yes, we always let them know that strictly pay and conditions of employment are not grievable, but we don't stop employees from filing grievances. We advise them what the rules are, we advise them what the possibilities are, but we don't stop them from filing their grievance. There's not really a provision in the charter or in our rules to deny a grievance. That would then be the burden of the the attorneys or the hearing officer or the employee to basically make their case. Why is this grievable? Why is this not grievable?
That's-
And we leave that decision to the hearing officer.
Yeah, because as you can see with that amount of number too, and so I appreciate you saying that you do explain
We do.
what is grievable and non-grievable, because that would be a terrible thing to have to set up for employees to go into something believing they have a grievable offense and it not turn out that way, / legal costs for the city and everything. So I'm just very interested, like you said, if if this is something that's coming up right now, we want to make sure we're doing what we can to address any issues there. If it's a breakdown in communication, or like I said, describing what is a grievable offense. So
Right now, they're citing potential discrimination. So that's what sort of separated it, I guess, from just I'm grieving my pay, I'm grieving my raise. So that then would become a decision of the hearing officer.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the report.
We've had grievances before your time here. We had firefighter mass grievances back in the 90s that, again, when you say unprecedented, they all revolved around one or more specific issues, and that's where the hearing officer has the discretion about how to handle that, right? That's state law, nothing we can do about that. But aggrievable under our charter, under section 1003 F6, all you can do and all your executive director can do is to designate a hearing officer to hear that appeal of any employee in a classified position relative to any personnel action adverse to such employee. Well, I mean, that could be just about anything. And it says including but not limited to, and then it gives a list. So at the end of the day, the hearing officer has to decide whether it falls within those matters that are grievable or not. Okay?
yeah, I just really want to make sure that again, I appreciate you explaining, Vicki, the process for that and making sure that I find that a staggering amount of people, so I just want to make sure that they were given all information that they needed.
Well, it's clearly not business as usual. I mean, something, so that's worth, thank you for the report on that. And so we can, and I think it's worth having this discussion to better understand it. So I guess, any more, Vicki, that you have to present for your report? Thank you. Dr. Drummond, are you here? There you are. Hey, Kelly.
I'm going to talk about business as usual and take it on a very different note because HR is doing some great things. Last week I had the opportunity to go to the National Public Sector HR Conference and talk and present on a national level on succession planning. I think that'll be a part of a conversation as you all are talking about the selection committee today. But I was able to talk with a group about why we do succession planning and the importance of how you do succession planning and building a succession plan that keeps up the continuity of work. So I'm very excited to be able to speak on that level. I'm going to be doing some additional work talking about succession planning and emotional intelligence as well. We have our employee appreciation event. That will be October 3rd, and we've sent information out to all of the directors to appreciate our employees that have been here. We get to recognize the employees that have done a great job, and so that's something else that HR gets to do in a great way to be able to recognize, and our team is working towards that, October 3rd. In addition to that, now, I want to say that Anderson Gassis is in person. I'm so excited to see him. But you all in the past have had the opportunity to talk to our law person, George Shields, as well. George Shields now has been appointed as our deputy director. I am so excited. I have been working with George over the past 3.5 years. His experience, everything that he brings to the table, his knowledge processes and of the city of Knoxville is going to come in handy in his level of expertise, his legal knowledge, bringing that back before us as well, and the deputy director position. So excited to have him. So those of you all, I think he's on the call on the meeting today, but I'm so excited to have George. Our team is so excited to have George as part of our HR team and the level of expertise that he brings in. Additionally, the benchmarking positions. Every year in the fall, and then we do it again for the new fiscal year, we look at positions that need to be benchmarked. Currently, we have almost 50 positions that are general government positions that are going to be reviewed with MTAS, with looking at other benchmarks around the state of Tennessee and with other municipalities. Every year, we look at the positions. In the previous year, 2 years ago, we did a full compensation study, but in between this, we will do this every 4 to 5 years. In between this, we get to look at all of the positions that may need to be tweaked in between that major compensation study. So right now, we're looking at 50 positions as well. We will bring that before City Council by the end of the year as well. The DISC assessment is something that I wanted to bring before you all. Every quarter we do supervisory training. I've talked about that before. This month in September, it's in a few weeks, September 26th. We're going to have a professional to come in to do a DISC assessment. I wanted to make sure you all had this as well to understand what the DISC assessment is. The DISC assessment is a behavioral-based self-assessment that we're going to be doing with all supervisors that are on task here as well. And the DISC assessment will measure 4 areas: dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. And it looks at this and it works with team building. How do you work in teams? Leadership. It's a self-assessment. So we're bringing in an expert to come in and talk about this DISC assessment, working with all of them. And I wanted to bring this before your attention today, just so you could have this and know a little bit about that and know the types of things that we're doing in HR to promote training and on that aspect as well. And then finally, part of what we're doing is the Title VI video. I wanted to bring this, our training coordinator has redone the training video for Title VI and looking at the what we need to have in compliance for Title VI. So all employees beginning at the first of the year will receive a new video. It will be department-based, and we will be looking at Title VI to ensure that all employees are updated. So I want to thank Leah for getting that done as well. So those are the things that we have going on. I think that I've covered everything. I'm excited, and I always come with you all with some fun, exciting stuff. So looking forward to what we've got going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's now, we don't have any unfinished business. Oh,
Can I ask
Scott,
one
yes.
quick question?
Sure.
Is that training video like public if we wanted to?
We can get it for you. Absolutely, sir.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, we have no unfinished business. We do have under new business, item 5 is a request by Police Chief Noel to address the board regarding the expanded certification and promotion issues. So, Chief.
Thank you, Dr. Lawrence. So after reviewing the referral candidates eligible for promotion to sergeant, I asked Assistant Chief Powell through my personnel director, Brooke Wright, to make a request for expanded certification, which allows us to be able to get additional candidates eligible for promotion. That request was denied, and the explanation that we received from that was that expanded certification is only for new hires, and it's not for the promotional process. So we believe that the request for expanded certification is both reasonable, but also allowed by civil service rules and city rules. And we do not believe that the expanded certification is only allowable for new hires. It should be acknowledged that everybody on a promotional list that we receive has passed the civil service test already, which makes them qualified for promotion and capable of filling the leadership roles that we have in the organization. Now, just because someone is qualified to be promotion doesn't mean that everyone is qualified is going to be eligible or is going to be promoted, but I really believe that if you pass that test, you're qualified to be promoted. So with that, from my perspective, the civil service testing process is really designed to meet who meets those minimum qualifications to be eligible to be promoted. And it's my job and the job of my leadership team at the Knoxville Police Department to decide who is best suited for the position and a best fit to lead our organization into the future. So when we make promotions which have an immediate impact on our organization, we're looking for leaders who understand and can execute the mission of the department, have a desire to work in a team environment, have a strong track record, and have the ability to communicate effectively. We're also striving to create a more diverse workforce that is representative of the community that we serve. It's very important. We need a more diverse candidate pool to give more people, again, all of which have met those minimum qualifications to be promoted, to have the opportunity to lead and shape the culture of our department and help me and my leadership team accomplish our mission, accomplish the culture change that we so strongly desire to bring to this department. So for the commissioners here, I'm asking for your help. 2 years ago, when I came here as the new chief, I made a promise to our department, to the mayor, and myself that we would strengthen the culture of KPD and make all areas of our city safer and provide our employees with the resources and training to be the best that they could be, and also build a workforce that looks like and is responsive to our community. So I'm asking each and every one of you all to help me fulfill that promise. By granting our request to expand certification, you're not making any promotional decisions. But what you are doing is giving more people a seat at the table. You're giving more people the opportunity to compete for the promotional spots that we have. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we do have y'all received a memorandum from Vicki on this, and would you like to explain what the memorandum briefly, or how?
Sure.
Would you like to?
We have never used expanded certification for promotions. That's always been based on the charter provision that promotions are based on merit. It has, in my tenure and before, has not ever been requested or approved for a promotional process. And that example I gave you can show you what that would do to promotional processes throughout the city. Some departments might not want that option. Even if you were allowed, I will let Mr. Winchester speak to whether or not that's even permitted under the charter. We have never interpreted that it was. But if you did, it essentially, for departments who are truly trying to increase minority promotions based on qualified candidates, might serve as a useful tool. To departments that simply wanted to circumvent the merit system and reach someone who did not rank high enough to be promoted, it would allow them to do that, because once the list is expanded, anyone on that list may be selected. So we could expand the list for the minorities or for females, and a non-minority or a non-female can then be selected, and there's nothing that I or this board could do to prevent that. So it would essentially become a means for any department to simply expand the list beyond those that our rules provide will be referred. There's also not a provision in the rules for this board to make that decision. This board, through its rules, place that decision with the executive secretary alone. And there's no provision for that to be appealed to this board or for this board to change that decision. To do this, you would probably need to change your rules. We'll again defer to Mr. Winchester. You would probably need to change your rules. What I would think would be a preferable approach, if this is a goal of KPD, would be to simply change their promotional exam processes to be pass-fail. That's a much simpler way to do this. It's a rule-compliant and a charter-compliant way to do this. Is rather than using a strict numerical ranking system, let their exam processes be pass-fail on promotions if that's what they wish to do. That then gives everyone equal standing. We are applying a minimum standard. Every candidate would have equal standing and could be equally considered. And that would apply just to the police department, because they're the ones requesting that. If other departments wanted to request that, this board could consider that as well.
Of course, is there, let me interrupt to say, there is no an established passing grade, is there not? So you have a rank order. I mean, is there?
So for
there-
police promotions, right now, there's a written exam for sergeant, and then for everything else, there's also an oral board for sergeant, and then an oral board for lieutenant and captain. Right now, those are scored numerically. Everyone receives a numerical score. Any exam process that we have can be made a pass-fail exam. Basically, the hurdle is you pass it, and everybody who passes is treated with the same score.
Well,
We have
but on that
other
on that
positions we
numerical-
do that way.
On the numerical exam, is there a point at which they pass?
Yes.
So, I
So
mean, it's-
basically, anyone that gets above this number is a pass. Anyone who gets below that is a fail.
I mean, so what it sounds to me, it's pass-fail with extra info. I mean, you know, with a numerical component on top of what's existing criteria, which is you pass, and somebody doesn't reach that criteria, they can't go forward.
Correct.
That's where we are.
Correct.
Okay, I guess we can, thank you for that. I would throw this open to discussion. Yeah, Stephanie.
Well, I just, just listening to Chief Noel about the proposal, it makes logical sense, and, it's good succession planning, and it's, builds continuity, and, for the culture, for the community, all that you presented, it makes good sense, and so that's the information I wanted to bring to the table. And I really appreciate you for standing and bringing us the information. So, Jamie, you want to?
So I just kind of have some questions when we talk about, like, the top 5 typically is given. So how do we originate with that number? Or just can you, I guess, go, like you talked about, within the hiring process, or, well, now maybe beyond, where's that number come from versus looking at the whole portion of applicants that for a job would pass that test to be eligible? So,
That was established so long before I was here. I'm going to say, if you look traditionally at civil service merit systems, it's typically a rule of 3 or a rule of 5. So I'm going to assume that when those rules were drafted an eternity ago, they were looking at what is common in civil service systems. Some things that would be important to note: you have 2 trains of thought on even the rule of 5. We have historically had employees, and we still do, who believe in a rule of 1. They believe, particularly in uniform, you find a different mindset in uniform than you do in general government in many cases. And we have historically had sort of a divide between uniformed employees who believe it should go straight down the list. There should not even be the discretion within the top 5. It should be first vacancy goes to number 1, the second vacancy goes to number 2. We have had grievances, we have had litigation on that, but the rule of 5 is supported. And when you have the rule of 5, it can be anyone in that group of 5. The potential you would run in using expanded certification when it's not clearly supported is that an employee who's being passed over essentially to get an expanded list could file a grievance, and then whether or not you have the authority to do this goes before a hearing officer or potentially before a court.
Is there
So-
not a,
That's your potential. You could have those employees who feel they're being damaged by this could file a grievance.
right, I think there always are unintended consequences and or imaginary horribles, sometimes I like to call them. But do not we have the authority as the board to deal with situations with underrepresentation and to act to remedy that
Yes, through your rules.
through our rules?
Through your rules. And your rules right now have that rule and leave that decision to your executive secretary. You would need to change that rule.
Scott?
So I have a question. I'm looking at the applicant eligibility register. So we already, I mean.
And that's not the one for sergeant, just so you guys know. That
Okay,
is
but
just a
I'm just an example.
random
Right.
example I chose to
Right.
give you
But
an
I mean, this
illustration.
one doesn't have a top 5, it has a top 6, because 5 and 6 tie.
Correct,
So it's not always just 5.
correct.
So that's my first note. And then my other question is the threshold of 81. What's the point of having that?
It's not that's not the threshold. So that red line represents, if we use expanded certification, expands the eligibility list on the referral to where it captures 2 members of the protected class that the department is making the subject of the expansion. So in that particular case, if the department is requesting the list be expanded to include 2 minorities, that red line is the cutoff because it goes to the second minority. If it were females, it would go to the second female. So that's what that line represents, is where that second capture. If there isn't one, there is no expanded certification.
So that line has nothing to do with the score?
Correct,
Okay, got it.
correct. And then everyone above that line is considered, is now eligible to be considered and can be chosen.
But
And we have often had requests for expanded certification where no minority was selected.
So I hear you say that the board can make a change for the rule.
You
Change
could
the rule.
amend the rule, yes.
Let's amend the rule.
If the charter supports that amendment,
I
not
think
that
that
to
we do have a
Mike.
process for amending the rules.
You need to go through the process.
one other quick question.
Yes.
Chief Neal noted that it was denied because it was only for new hires.
We have only used expanded certification for new hires
Okay.
historically. It has never been requested or approved for promotion.
And that's a precedent, but is that a controlling precedent or just more back?
We have done that because the charter did not seem to support it.
But at least this section 1524, it doesn't specifically say it's only for new hires.
Correct.
What's the process to change the rule?
Well, might want to point something out too within that. So section 1524, expanded certification. So I'm reading here, like the use of expanded certification to remedy an underrepresentation of women or minorities in the city's workforce when properly documented requires the approval of the board. So, are we not able just to make that right here?
Are you asking me?
Sure.
Yeah.
That's where it's been applied to initial hires, not to promotions. The promotion rule, the rule of 5 for promotions is not in section 15 at all. It's in section 21 of your rules.
So 2102.
Yeah, well, it's in, the 2102.1 is where the rule of 5, again, even I don't go back far enough to tell you how the rule of 5 came around. It's been around a long time. The rule of 5 was simply, as your executive secretary just told you, instead of just giving the top ranked individual or individuals who might tie on a promotional exam, we're giving the top ones, the board approved a rule that said, well, we'll give the appointing authority, who is the department head, in this case would be the police chief, 5 to select them, a rule of 5. Was that arbitrary? Is that just something they pulled out of the air? I don't know. But what it did, it gave the department head the ability to say, okay, well, these are the 5 highest ranking. Now that's involving promotions. Okay, and that comes about because our charter says in several places, it distinguishes it from the expanded certification, section 1005 of our charter. Promotions shall be made by appointing officers on the basis of merit within the rules prescribed by the Civil Service Merit Board. So you've got the limiting factor on merit, not based on diversity, gender, merit. Okay, that's what it says. It also says that in the very preamble of the charter that created the personnel department, in section 1001, where it says personnel actions including but not limited to appointment, that would be initial selections, promotion and retention shall be made on the basis of merit and fitness alone. Well, all of a sudden, it's like, okay, now we've got to deal with just merit and fitness alone. Well, so how did the board promulgate rules early on to follow those charter requirements? That's why we ended up with the rules that we have now. Now, if you want to change your rules, if that's what you want to do, then there's a process where we go about doing that. But since I've been here, we've never applied the expanded certification rule to a promotional situation.
Yeah, let me interrupt here. I think where I see a lot of this is you're consistent with merit with pass-fail, as you reported. That is a definition of merit, and then you can have more information to score, to rank order people, and that's taking it a step further. But it's not contrary to merit to have a pass-fail situation. You said we can't change rules to do this. I'd like for you, Jane, to read your 1554 again. That didn't seem to be limited to me on.
And so, yeah, so because the use of expanded certification to remedy underrepresentation of women or minorities in the city's workforce when properly documented requires approval of the board. So that's.
Yeah, I mean, now, Andrew, Anderson, so what is your
So
sense of
I would just raise section 302, where that's the section addressing equal employment and affirmative action policy of the city. In section 302, it begins, the city shall establish, implement, and maintain an affirmative action plan which shall have the ultimate goal of making all levels of employment within the city government structure to all persons who can perform the required duties regardless of age, race, religion, creed, national origin, sex, or for qualifying persons with disabilities or other legally protected status. So that's referencing all levels of employment. So I think there's a risk, it's the opinion of the law department, that if we were to apply this only to new hires and not to all levels of employment, that there could be a problem.
Right. Okay, well, let me just lead with, I'm very sympathetic. I think we have a city priority and goal, and the requirements we have in what you just read, and equity generally and diversity as well, would speak to giving chief more discretion if they're qualified and would merit, but then it's a yes, no, you are or you're not. And I say that isn't necessarily contrary to the way we could approach things. The argument is that up to this point haven't done it, and that there are unintended consequences with moving to this and other departments using this discretion without the goal in mind. The appropriate goal in mind is how I read you. So I would like to find the most effective way for us to approve making this a pass. I mean, it's a de facto. You were requesting a de facto pass-fail. You're saying everybody who's eligible pass. It's just that the scoring itself is rank ordering people and limiting it. The way I read it.
Yes, sir. My goal is to get as many names as possible to consider people on the basis of merit.
To get to the next.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's part of the merit process.
Continue the process, yes, sir.
So, I mean, that is where we find ourselves right now. And I don't know does any board member have a preferred course of action to? I'm assuming, I'm sensing everybody would like to enable this expanded certification and do so in a way that's consistent with appropriate process.
The rule of five has been around long, the rule of five.
It's been around as long as I have. It's been, I didn't
It might be
promulgate it, but
outdated.
it's been around since the
You might
early
need to review
90s.
it, just because we're in a new era.
But it's not just a rule of five. The charter itself says that and I'm reading from the charter section 1003G now, the rules shall provide for, these are promotion lists, to remain in effect for ranking of eligibles in accordance with ratings earned in examinations. Well, how do you earn a ranking in examination? You rank them according to how it's been done, is you rank them according to their score. That's pretty reasonable.
But you can have don't get into the weeds here, but, I mean, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
But it's what precision can we really have to test? Is there really a difference of 2 on the scale once everybody, the ranking is still, could be, you pass, you fail. That's a ranking. You're ranked as
If
pass.
you approve that, that is the
That would be,
rank.
that would be the ranking.
That is the ranking, right.
And I can echo what Stephanie's saying there too. I mean, it sounds like a thing for some other agendas on reconsidering just this rule of 5 that's been hanging out here. What do we need for 2024? There's always that concern within testing, and I'm not going to go out and assume and say this, but, you know, if rule of 5 is only getting me white male police officers, and we have others that are qualified and have passed that test, I want to make sure that they're not being excluded a point or 2 down from that, you know what I mean? This, it may not be a large enough net that we are casting within that, if this has been our outcome X number of years, so.
I want to make a request right now, just to approve Chief's request.
Do you want to make that form of a motion?
Yes, I'm making a motion to approve Chief Noel's request.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I vote aye. That's, motion passes.
Can we specify exactly what you just approved so I can understand whether it complies with the charter or not?
Well, my reading of what we just approved, you all correct me, well, I guess you made the motion, but as I understand your motion, we're approving the request for Chief Noel to take everybody who had a passing grade and move them along to the next step. Is that my understanding?
Yes, sir.
I don't know that we have any rule that allows me to give him every person who had a passing grade on their exam. That's not even expanded certification. There's no rule that provides for that, nothing. So you can either, unless I'm incorrect, you can either make a motion to not follow the rule that says the board defers that decision to the executive secretary and approve it anyway, even though there's no means for that. Or we can draft a rule amendment to change his exams to pass fail, but there is absolutely nothing that allows for this board within our current rules to provide a director an entire list of eligibles who have all passed. That's not even expanded certification. The list of people who passed goes well beyond expanded certification. So the second subject, and I noted to Jane's comment, our exams are not keeping qualified females and minorities out of the top 5. His current referral includes a qualified minority and 2 qualified females who are also underrepresented. On the captain list, the #1 candidate is a minority. Our exams are not disqualifying. They are being referred. To expand the list down to capture the second minority is different than giving him the list of everyone who passed. That's a much larger list. So the second minority is not the last person on the list. There's a significant number of people below that minority who would all then be.
I want to stick to what the motion was basically, you know, I think we have general intent of what this kind of limitation of the scoring, what I would, now this is getting beyond the technicality where we are, but I think we got a false precision in scoring where when something is a pass-fail situation that would enable somebody to move in, you know, qualification rather than we know this person is a little bit more qualified than somebody else. And then we can do that by making a pass-fail test. You've already said that. We can treat it as a you are or you're not. So I guess I'm a little confused as to why at this point we couldn't just say, well, if it were pass-fail, how many would be passed on? You know?
I would have to go pull that referral, but it's currently not pass-fail.
Right.
We would need some mechanism to address that their exams are going to be pass-fail. Now, I don't know if that's without going and examining the rule, whether that's something that could simply be a conversation between the chief and I, because typically scoring is at the discretion of the executive secretary. So what is the cutoff score? Those are usually matters that are discussed between myself and the department head. I don't know that the rule, without reading it, limits that. That would be something that would not require a board action, if that were acceptable. But then that would be fair to everyone, essentially. That doesn't allow the expanded certification rule to be abused, and it's also fair to everyone. That would essentially give the chief every candidate. If the argument is that anyone who passes the exam should be considered, that would allow that. That would give everyone
saying that
the
is a
same
mechanism.
consideration.
Well, I would just, I don't want to make this form of a motion right now, but if that is possible, because we have an immediacy
Yes, sir.
issue here. And then to clean this up, in quotes, or to make it more clear, I would like to then proceed immediately to change the rule.
Well, let me suggest this, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Your rules in the charter allow a procedure for you to go through that will, like for instance, the charter says that you have the power sitting here today to review upon request of any aggrieved party, that doesn't necessarily mean just an employee, or on your own motion, the application and effect of any rule. That's what you're doing right now.
Right.
And then to make a decision about what you want to do. That's in the charter, okay? And that's why I wanted to understand what you're doing. If you're deciding today that you want to change something like that, like the ranking and how they do it, okay, and that's what you're wanting to do, then we have a bunch of rules that we need to clean up
Right.
that are inconsistent with what we just did.
Right.
And that's
That's
going to
what I'm-
speak more prospectively. Now, whether somebody will come in and say what we've done is unfair or not, I can't tell you.
Yeah.
Okay, because we haven't gone through any prior hearings or publication process about changing those rules yet. And those are not something I've created, or, I mean, that's what y'all created over the years. And that's why I want to know exactly what we're doing as far as how, there's a series of rules. I could give you a list of 10 rules right now that are impacted by this.
Well, I would say, I think, short term, I think Dr. Hatfield made a proposal to be able to work with the chief, to be able to accommodate this immediacy. And then and as you say, that the thing to do then, to get the rules in order to accomplish what we want to, we would have to have the appropriate hearing and notice and so forth.
I think that's
Just like we
correct.
do for others.
Clearly, under the charter, the executive secretary and the department head, chief, can get together and make a review of the examination requirements, because that's what I'm basically hearing,
That's right.
okay? They can do that,
Okay.
okay?
Well, and I would just say, I would personally hope, I don't know how to express that, I mean, we have a resolution to that effect, but you've already offered to do that. If that's a way to go about it, I don't know that that's necessary, and then we can proceed on changing rules in the future.
That would, again, I would suggest that we try that method, because again, we've not done it sort of backwards before,
Right.
but that's what we're doing now. But for moving forward, we need to have our rules consistent with the new procedure.
Right, we definitely want.
All right.
Yes.
I do, before we move forward with that, I want to talk about, I know in the last year or two since I've been on this board, I know we have definitely heard from Chief Newell before about really desperate situation, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, right, to fill our KPD openings. And this is utmost of, public concern. I think this requires a lot of action right now. And to get down to what I'm trying to say here, I do recall whenever we as a board were able to help, I think, with the promotion line into sergeants, change some of those qualification times for that, and ultimately that decision was left to, well, at the end of the day, if the chief chooses it, and then, well, if people don't like it, that's the fun part of being a leader, right? But I didn't see really much hesitancy to that versus what we're doing with this expanded certification. So I'm just trying to understand fully how we could so easily review something like that that was done out of a necessity. And we did have some dissent, you know, from KPD in that, and that's where I told the gentleman that, you know, ultimately, we're not just gonna go pick, you know, the person not qualified enough or whomever for sergeant. Like, I don't believe it's in your best interest to want to do the one that is, you know, the right fit for the promotion. But we used that as example of a leader's choice in that. So we took a bit of, you know, leeway there and agreeing and allowing that and then trusting our chief to do that. So, and like for promotions, I know like just within this expanded certification, talking about, you know, how is that different in what we done before with just rubber stamping, you know, some of these changes to positions that have
It
come
was a
up?
rule change, it wasn't a rubber stamp. We went through the proper procedures to change the rule, to change the eligibility for sergeant. We had a proper notice, we had a hearing, a public hearing, and you amended the rule, which is all I'm saying today. You can't rubber stamp something that doesn't comply with the rules, you have to change the rules. And
Yeah, I
that's all
think-
I'm asking you to do. My job is to do what you tell me to do through your rules, and if you want that done differently, you have to change your rules. You can't just do what your rules don't support.
Well, I think we have I definitely agree, we need to change the rules. And I think what we're talking about here is a workaround to accommodate the necessity for purposes of better representation of all groups to enable the chief to meet with Vicki and talk about, and as you would describe it, to talk about the scoring. I guess that would be how we would frame it. So I think we've expressed our preference. I think there's a clear preference on where we want to go, and now it's a matter of getting there and making sure we're doing things the right way, moving forward, and are clear to everybody. And, you know, I'm a believer, you know, when we have rules, you know, people need notice, they need to have hearing, they need to be able to speak to them. I mean, all of these things need to be done as we cement this into policy. So I don't think we need any motion. Do we need, I guess we're making a formal request to begin on that rule changing process. Do we need a motion to that effect?
Well, if you're gonna, we would need to go through having the rule that we're gonna change presented so that people will know, and you can vote on what the changes are.
Right.
We would need to identify those rules and then those changes and then come before you and say, here they are, do you want to do it this way? And so we publish that, the chief would need to see it, everybody would need to
That's
make
right.
sure that's what they
And
want.
these need public and stakeholder scrutiny. So I guess my request would be for you to identify what rules need to be changed.
We can do that.
And then we can then move forward with establishing that process.
Well, then Vicki can get, Dr. Hatfield can get with the chief or whoever his designees are in the law department and go through and with the HR and make sure everybody's on the same page on what these rules are and need to be changed to get the result that you're wanting and
Yes.
the chief is wanting.
Yes.
And then during that period, that's where we heard from that sergeant, from that person who came in and said, I don't want you to change that rule, okay? People can at least have a comment about it because that's the way it's
Well,
set
that's the
up.
way government's supposed to work.
That's the way our charter rules work, that's right. That's right.
Is there, I'm sorry, before that, is there, if we do go that route, what's our chances or lead time or notice and need to expedite that before?
We can expedite it pretty quickly, we still have to publish it, and we have to have at least 10 days' notice.
So we can have that for the next meeting,
Unlikely.
2 meetings.
Yeah, usually rule changes because the public notice that's required, it requires notice in the newspaper. It takes a little more time. Typically, a rule change is about 2 meetings. And that, because I don't really know what you want changed. And I would suggest assigning a board member, maybe Jane, to work with Mike and I, because I need to know what changes you want. I don't know what changes
We can
you
do
want.
it very quickly and even have a special meeting. We've done that before and talked about it when we had a real urgency to do those
We can do
things.
that to
We
discuss
can
what
do
we
it.
want.
Well, Jane, would you mind serving? We're asking you to serve.
Voluntold, no, I'm just, I mean, whatever capacity to, I may enlist some additional help off the cuff, but I can do that.
Anderson?
Just to clarify, so are you moving forward with the expanded certification today as to the sergeant positions?
We are, correct me if I'm wrong, the board, correct me if I'm wrong, we are moving forward through a mechanism that the executive secretary has suggested that deals with the scoring, so I don't think there's any board action vote on that per se, though we had a motion and a vote prior to that. So I think that's what we're doing, and then we're beginning on the rule changes necessary in the future. That's what I believe we're doing.
Okay, so this would be delayed on the expanded certification, just so.
No, I think it would be,
It's something different than the experience.
yeah, I think
Okay.
it's,
To meet his needs.
Okay.
On these current promotions, basically what I'm gonna go back and look at and work with them on is, so right now, everyone gets a score on the test, they get ranked, he gets X number of eligibles based on that ranking, is to talk to KPD and establish whether or not, I believe we can, but I'll have to look at a few things, to do promotional exams for KPD as a pass-fail, which then it would essentially give them all eligible. So what he communicated was, if they pass that minimum threshold, they should be considered, it would give everybody that consideration. So I believe there's a mechanism to do that without any rule amendments. And then what I would need from the board is what specific rule amendments are you seeking? Are you wanting to change the expanded certification rule? Are you wanting to apply it to all
Let's include
promotions?
this.
Do you want to expand the rule of 5 to a rule of 10? What are the rule changes we're considering? So, and then I will be happy to work with Jane on whatever those rule amendments
and we
are.
can ask Mike and Anderson to check based on this too, just make sure everybody's.
And I'll make sure Jane has what those cutoffs are, like what day will we need something, if it were even possible for the next meeting versus this, so the day I have to have that in order to get it out for that required public notice. It's a little more notice than it is for a board meeting, for a rule hearing. So I'll get you those dates.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like what we want for your options there is actually for the expanded certification to include promotions.
And I would potentially
Because-
suggest getting feedback. That's the kind of rule change I would suggest getting feedback from other departments. Because when you have a rule that applies citywide, I would want to hear what other directors, what their preferences are on that.
Well, it could allow what I would
Before you
like,
change that for everyone,
we want to allow, make it
I would maybe get
permissive
some
for
feedback.
others, but not require. I mean, that, I think that's the things we can expect. So therefore, any other departments where they just will say, we want to stick with the ranking,
Yeah.
the status quo, be the way to handle that.
And I know this is a lot to cover, and thing you're trying to keep it all straight, so the rule of 5, does that go for everybody or do other departments, did you say?
Rule 5 is
get-
everything.
Everybody.
It's
So
everything.
no department ever receives just like a full list of qualified for,
So you have different types of exams, and that's where I think we have the leeway to, one mechanism you can use that eliminates the rule of 5, when the job duties require it, we have simplified exam procedures, that's where everyone gets the same score. It's a pass-fail. You meet a minimum criteria, everyone gets the same score. We have categorical scoring, which clumps people into categories of scoring, and then you have discrete ranking. So rule of 5 applies to discrete ranking versus simplified exam procedures or categorical lists, which work differently. So that's where I'm saying I think we have structure within the rules to use the scoring mechanism to meet his goals.
and then, so, just to kind of belabor the point a little more and nothing like that. So, if, okay, I know what we're talking about with this discrete ranking, but, I mean, I see, if we have other departments that have a whole list with that can qualify, there's just no way that we can make any kind of motion right now? Is that what we're being?
Motion to do what, I'm sorry?
To approve what Noel said, just to fast track opening this up to make sure we have a good look at our qualified passing persons for promotion, so.
We've already passed
So
a
we've
motion that
approved-
we're, that I've asked exactly what it was. You've already approved something.
Expanded
But
I think where we
clarification
are,
for the
we are,
Chief Noel today?
there's some question about what we can do under the rules. And what we're saying, Vicki's saying, we have a way to get this accomplished for the short run, and then we have a medium run, at least, solution that lets them adjust the rules so that it's clear in the future. That's the way I see it. I think we've got this, I think we've got Chief Noel, what he needs now, as long as there's a clear sense of the board of what we
So
want.
then we've approved that,
Yes. Well, we have.
that motion, we've approved it.
Yeah. Well, that's true. We've approved the motion, and I think we're going to, the way of implementing right now in the short run is your conversation. Then we don't, that's the way I look at it. Chief Noel, you want to?
If I may, so I guess, I'm a little confused here. What I would ask for is that I get immediate relief now, and also we work to fix this moving forward in the future. I have an immediate need now to be able to promote people into supervisory positions. When I'm short of supervisors, it diminishes my operational integrity. But also, I think even more importantly than that, I have people that are eager to compete for these jobs. And if we wait another month, 2 months, 3 months to get this worked out, which I think we need to do, like we need to work through that, but let's try to do, if we can, do both. If we could grant expanded certification now, whether it's through Dr. Hatfield or this board, give me my expanded certification now so I can move forward with the process, but then also direction that we move forward, my team and the civil service staff move forward to address this problem long-term so we have a pass-fail component of this, and we could work through that. They can start working on that tomorrow as far as I'm concerned, and maybe have that ready to go next month or the following month, but I need to be able to promote as soon as possible.
Well, that is exactly what I think
But
we've
we've
approved.
approved.
And that's our intent, is that immediately you have the conversation that says you would like the scoring to be basically pass-fail and be able to proceed immediately.
So if we did the pass-fail, how soon, if we had that discussion, say tomorrow, how soon would I
That
be
can
able
be
to
tomorrow,
get?
that can be ready by
Okay.
tomorrow. I just have to go back and look. I just want to make sure there's not something in the rules that keeps us from doing that. I don't think there is. We amend that scoring, we have to change it in PeopleSoft and on the eligibility
Sure.
register. To basically say that any score above this is a pass, any score below this is a fail.
Okay.
And then that ends up ranking everyone evenly. The way we have other promotional exams, in service especially, where that is the case. Everyone gets the same score. It's a pass-fail threshold, they get the same
So
score.
we got the
So that's your immediate solution.
we got an
That's-
immediate solution, because we all understand you
Yes.
can go on this now.
Yes, sir.
So we're talking about a day or so, that's fine. Then we're going to take the longer range solution to put this put clarity into the rules.
Yes.
So we don't have this kind of thing come up in the future with this uncertainty.
Yes, sir.
And I think that's a good solution.
Yes. Sounds good.
Okay. All right. And the next, we'll declare item 5. We'll move on to item 6, the selection committee update.
All
Thank you.
right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So. Okay, so for the Civil Service Executive Secretary Search Committee, which I know is a tongue twister, try to say that a few times fast there. Just to give you an update, so we have met in the interim between the last couple of meetings and everything, so we are going to be really hammering out that updated job description for the Executive Secretary. You're going to be looking at that very soon, within the next couple of weeks. Definitely to have that, and I hope even possibly distributed for review, the October meeting on that. So that's the meat of it. I know David Brace and our employee reps have graciously volunteered some extra time to make sure we get all that going and correct. So,
If there's lunches,
if there's lunch.
so there has to be lunch.
There's good incentive right there. So I do appreciate everybody's help with that. So I have good assistance there, so. So, and then I just kind of wanted to, you know, it's already September, so something else that I thought would be helpful, and I know Vicki kind of been talking with this and making sure, giving a good exit and changeover, having overlap with everything. Like we've had so much good discussion today, right? We want to make sure we are fully understanding civil service merit process, and you know, sometimes it can take longer to fill a position. We don't even want to run the risk of what if we don't have somebody, you know, in a spot as like an intermediary or anything like that. Our biggest concern here is obviously city employees, that this doesn't affect them at all. And after you retire, then we'll have a new executive secretary in, and that should be the end of it as far as like the employee experience goes, and any concern within that too. So in saying that, like I say, you know, leading this search committee, I feel like on my part, I'd be negligent if I were to, you know, not make a motion necessary needed to also bring in like an intermediary, I'm sorry, to help make sure that the civil service process is going through smoothly, like I said. And so I have spoken with the mayor, India Kincannon, about this too, and was just reaching out to her to let her know that we might need some executive director assistance with this, just to be able to come in and, you know, turn over the ropes for a while, working together, but making sure we have everything process procedures-wise nailed down. Give you an easy strategy too to coast into retirement, so you know, take some more off from that too. So I saying all this, I want to make a motion to the board. Again, I've spoken with Mayor Kincannon, asked for resources related to this for an interim civil service executive secretary. And I was given the name of Nick Bradshaw. He's our director of fleet services here. And he does have a very large background too within the civil service side of things. So I want to make clear to the board members here, my motion is that effective immediately, if we can have Mayor Kincannon approve this, as we've discussed, to bring Nick Bradshaw, our director of fleet, in as a temporary interim civil service executive secretary to work alongside our civil service director while we are continuing this search, and then until we are able to find a full replacement for that.
Okay, and explain again, I think you did, but the rationale.
Rationale?
Is this a transition smoothing?
Yes.
Rationale?
Yes. I mean, we want to cut this anyway. You look at us, we're a major corporation with like several different technically industries in there, right? You know, within everything. So honestly, I know the good thing about the civil service process is we have a lot of employees through the city that have worked through other departments and, you know, have experience within that. And I mean, we just got back through summer holiday season. We're about to launch into another holiday season in the next couple of months. And I want to make sure we got time for everything and trying to fill that position. So
Is it so after it retires, it just, if we don't have anything in place, it's to
Exactly.
continuity at that end too?
yes, because keep in mind with myself and then also the rest of our selection committee, I mean, we are doing this on a volunteer basis. We're knocking it out of the park, but it's a lot to take on. I don't want to also burden them too much with their full-time jobs as well. So I want to be certain that we just have a safety net in place should we need it. And if we're able to fill that position, then we're good to go within that, so.
Well, then it's according, well, I guess following Robert's rules, if you're making a motion before we discuss, we would need a second.
I'll second. I'll second the motion.
All right, discussion.
So can you go back like timeline? I mean, the thing is,
Yeah.
I don't know when we're gonna put this out, but we may identify a candidate, and they may need 2 months, 3 months, and it could be well in the spring.
Right, so, you know, just looking at time to fill and like getting that ready with everything, I mean, like I said, we are nailing down our job description within this month or so, and hope to have like everything posted. That would be probably by October. But, you know, given that it is the holiday season, it kind of slows within hiring or trying to find that. Main thing is, we don't want to have to stress rushing into this, you know, it's like I told our volunteer board members within that, this is possibly a 20-year hire. This isn't just something that you want to snap your fingers on, so that's for us to really take our time with too. Gives us more time to complete what we need to do, and get the best candidate in here, and also, again, alleviate any transitional woes or worries with that, and process procedures, some extra help too, if needed, just to, you know, get it off handed to the next person coming in a easy fashion there, so.
And I'm sorry, I ask this every meeting. Your last day is when?
January 31st.
I mean, that's tight. Yeah.
Do we need to speak to the, I call on Mr. Brace to speak to administration support?
Yeah, so there was a discussion that Jane had with the boss, and so the boss called me. Nick is at a public works conference. And so I called Nick, I had a conversation with the boss, I talked with Anderson. I think the idea was, if there's a schedule issue, there's a backup. Also, Vicki doesn't have a deputy, she's got a pretty lean staff. So this idea of the administration is good with offering someone with skills and experience. Nick is former civil service director. He's, is it Sherma?
Sure.
I'm sorry. I am not in the human resources world, but this is a standard certification. So he's qualified. He could commit about 95% of his time to really helping Dr. Hatfield with the transition. And then should there be an issue, there would not be any drop of merit protections for employees. And so again, I think the board has the authority. I asked Anderson to look at it, or Mr. Gass, I'm sorry. And so I think they have the authority, and if the board wanted that, I would still need to follow back up with the mayor one more time, and she would approve it. So just, I did bring, the mayor said, would you bring Nick's resume? So Nick, I'll hand that out. I just wanted you to have that. He's willing. We'll need to have a couple of weeks for him, or a week or so for him to kind of just button things up on fleet. It's running pretty well. He does not want, he really likes when he does in operations.
Yes.
I'm not saying he doesn't like the world of civil service. He does not have an interest in the job. I think that's important. He's not trying to slide in to be a top candidate. He would come in and work with Dr. Hatfield on a day-to-day basis, get some of the, I mean, obviously, Dr. Hatfield's been in for a long time, fully supportive, working together, and then if there's a time schedule, so it's basically adding additional executive resources. If the board would like it, we would confirm it with the mayor, and then I could work with Dr. Hatfield on how that may integrate into civil service.
Any other, well, let me give one reaction, I'd like to have a little some clarity of authority within that. So would it be I mean, it seems a little, or is there some other deputy or what?
An interim co-civil service executive secretary.
I think Mr. Gass I think he's looked at this as well, and I think that is what Jane had suggested. Again, I talked to the mayor and had a short conversation with Nick, but I think Mr. Gass would have that.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, highlight on interim, so.
Any
Make sure
other
everybody hears that part.
comment, any other discussion, maybe other board members wish to help on it?
Can I comment? I would like to be able to talk to employees and maybe have some time. This is all brand new information, wasn't on the agenda that I recall. So I would ask that we postpone and vote on it at the next meeting. I think that would still give enough time for an interim person to have months, if needed.
Well, now, and the reason that this isn't necessarily something that we discussed within the civil Service Executive Search Committee is because that is to specifically identify someone new for that role, and this is for an acting job. So we have good reason, and after speaking with the mayor and everything, that this is an immediate need. So
Which employees are you referring to?
All the general government employees for the city.
All.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm the rep for general government employees.
So there's three just reps for, there's a police rep, a fire rep, and general government. Ms. Guptell's been the general government rep for.
Of course, this is
One
within, I mean, this is important intro operations of the
Yes.
department.
And again, and that's where I'm sorry, I do want to explain just the difference in separation within that. So, like I said, working with our selection committee, that is specifically selecting the new hire, ironing all of that part of that out. We, as a board, control, again, reporting and within that from civil service. So as a board, we're able to bring help in as needed. So this is something that is for the board to use in addition to Dr. Hatfield, so that we can make sure at the end of the day, we're on the hook for anything, should anything go wrong. So this is an extra step for us to safeguard that. So that is something that for the board is, what I'm saying, is necessary, and we can make that decision. The new hire process is going to be something that's totally, really separate from that, focusing on placing a new candidate within that.
My concerns don't have anything, like, I agree they're completely separate. So would this person have the same decision-making authority as Dr. Hatfield?
They would be a co, so
So let's make
on
it
that
defined.
same,
So what if we disagree on something?
well, that's something up to the
What if
board.
we disagree? I mean, that's gonna
And
happen.
this is a great time to talk to. We know we've had a lot of changes, right, and everything going through this process and coming in with a new executive secretary. So I do want to take a moment to remind everyone here and city employees that ultimately the Civil Service Merit Board are the ones, us, Scott, Mark's not here, Bill, Stephanie, myself, that have to green light really any decisions that are brought before the civil service part. So if there are any disagreements, again, that's our happy problem to have to figure out, so.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, and we have a second. Do we have any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate to, and this motion is, again, to enable, I guess it's enabling the administration to finalize the support, to provide the support for a position labeled co-interim director.
Executive secretary.
I'm
Sorry.
Co-interim executive secretary, that's what the motion is.
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Okay, well, that motion is adopted, and I guess we move forward with that immediately. Thank you.
I think, I'm sorry, just Ms. Guptell, I think you had your hand up.
No.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, thank you. All right, do we have any other business today?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Thank you.